Hey, what's going on, guys? Bot Mentality here, and today we're going to jump into Beyond Meat. I want to do a little bit of technical analysis, look a little bit into the fundamental side, talk a little bit about some press releases we've seen, and how that's going to affect us moving forward, what my outlook is for this upcoming week and the trades I do plan to take given the opportunity. So, all right, let's get started here. This is BYND, and we're going to jump over to the 1 day, and I want to point something out to you. So we IPO'd just a couple weeks ago in early May. We IPO'd at $45, and that same day, ripped up, and we hit highs of $72. A couple days after that, we popped up to 85. So they're almost 100% move in just 5 days. And so we went from 45 all the way up here to 85. A pullback to, let's just say 65. It really is technically down here like 61, but 65, pushed up here to 95, pulled back to 75, and then we hit 105 up here. One thing that I want to point out to you guys is the actual move we took. So I'm going to do this really ghetto, but it's going to work out, okay? So here's what I want to point out to you. So we moved from 45 all the way up to the initial move here to 95 or to 85. That's where we set the high here. So this is 85. This was the all-time highs at that point. On the daily, we saw a pullback down here to right here, which is 65. All right, a move up from 65 all the way up here to 95. All right, now you should be noticing a pattern. We pull back from 95 to 75. All right, so you're noticing the $20 spread of the, we set the high of the range, a pullback for a curl to build momentum there and rip up to new highs, right? And usually we consolidated 20 points below the all-time high before we had a multi-day consolidation and pushed up for that all-time high breakout, right? The ABCD pattern. So from 95 to 75, now we went from 75 back to 95, broke out above that and went to 105. So we've completed the all-time high breakout. So what does that mean? Of course, we should be looking to see a couple day pullback, right? That would be the obvious response. Now, I'm just throwing that idea out there. I'm not saying that's exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, but keep that in mind. This is the pattern that we've seen so far. This has been trading very technically within its natural momentum, right? And its natural range of 20 points over a couple days on these upside breakouts. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. The second thing, the reason why BYND can go from 45 to 105 in just a couple weeks here. The reason why it can do that is because it has a small float. So what that means is, I'll jump over here to Yahoo Finance and we will go to statistics here on Beyond Meat. And what you will see here is the float is 4.18 million. Just to compare that to anything else. So compare that to Verizon. Verizon's float here is 4.13 billion. So what does that mean? BYND has 4 million shares that can be publicly traded. That's what we're trading here when we go and we take a position on BYND in the underlying stock. It's one of those 4 million. If you'll notice, on high volume days, we're hitting volumes of 18 million. Recently here Thursday we hit 12 million. Friday 7 million. So we're trading more volume than that's publicly available, which means that shares are rotating. We call it float rotation. So that means everyone's getting long, and then once there's such a high demand because there's not many shares, and then everyone sells at the same time, and we see a pullback, right? Then everyone's looking to buy, and all the shares are bought up. There's a high demand, and we can skip these dollars. We can go from 85 to 90 to 95 to 100 that quick because there's high demand and low supply. So that's what was able to make us go from 45 to 105 this quickly. That's one of the main contributing factors, because I guarantee you, if we had 4 billion shares like Verizon, we wouldn't have made a move like this. There's too much available supply, right? So that's something to keep in mind here as to reasons why this sort of pattern can continue and we can see continued bullish momentum is because of a small float. Also, one other thing I want to point out here on BYND from a technical standpoint, you'll see that over the past, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, we've been moving to the upside overall with higher daily lows, right? I'll zoom in here to the 10-day. You can see even more clearly we've been moving up over the past couple days. If we jump over here to the SPY, right? Look at the SPY. We've been downtrending over the past couple days. What does that mean? That's a very obvious bullish divergence on BYND. So that is a bullish sign. That is positive. The bulls are definitely in control on BYND, 100%. That doesn't mean you can't make money on the put side, but you don't want to be the person, which we're going to talk about Citron research here in a second. You don't want to be the person that gets short too early, calls a top on it, and just rips back up on you, right? Then you got to sit with a red position. You don't want to do that. So Now let's talk about Citron Research. So we know it has a small float. The bulls have been in control from a technical standpoint for the majority of the time it has been traded. So Beyond Meat, Citron Research came out and they said that Beyond Meat is beyond stupid. And you'll know if you read the article that they actually went through and shorted this thing. And the day they shorted this was actually the 17th, which was this day right here. They got short and at the all-time highs. We saw a pullback and consolidation here. So if they sold all their position or they covered it all, they did make a good bit of money, but I doubt they did. They're probably looking for it to pull back towards 45, which is where it IPO'd because they said this is far overvalued. So Citron Research, a huge fund is actually short this. And guess what? They're underwater right now. If they held onto any of their position, they're underwater. And they probably have millions and millions of dollars invested in this. So they're going to be, things are going to be looking a little awkward. If you'll remember, Citron Research also shorted Tilray. And Tilray ripped all the way to 300. You guys remember that? We saw a rip from 20 bucks, curl up here, went all the way to 300. And they said they were short at like $90. And then again at like 150 or 180, and we went to 300. So Citron Research was saying they were short biased on Tilray, and they're just now getting into some good profit. That's something to keep in mind. Over the short term, Citron Research did affect the stock. They essentially assisted with this sell-off as people were trying to get on the right side with the smart money, right? And they're trying to get on the right side and bail out of their positions or get short, and they all got trapped. So where does that leave us now? Let's talk about my technical analysis and my outlook heading into next week. So the first thing I want to say is I'll just draw my support and resistance. So the main level that I respect for support is the previous all-time highs. You can use 90. I'm going to use 95. You could use 96.80 if you wanted to, or you could use 93. But I'm going to use 95. I like that $50 mark there. Another high interest area is going to be 100. And of course 105, and over that, because we don't have any chart history, it's pretty much every $5 or every $10, depending on how fast we get to ripping. But these are the most important levels for me. So to zoom in on a shorter term time frame, what does that look like? 5-day, 5-minute. What does that look like? Let's see. So the reason why 105 is important to me is that's the current all-time high. We saw essentially a quadruple top here and sold off where I took the puts in my last video I talked about. And then we saw a sell-off, a bounce, it held as resistance again, pull back here, gap down where we touched on the 95. Notice how 95 has been an important level 3 times here, and it was the previous all-time high. And then we saw a rip up and a close just below that resistance. So do I think we're going to gap up over that? Yeah, I think it's highly likely we're going to gap up over that. How am I going to trade this heading into Monday? It's either going to be one or two ways, guys. I'm not overly biased long or short. I can tell you for a fact the longs have had control pretty much since the 22nd. They've been in full control on the way up. There's been a couple times to scalp small money on puts, but nothing huge. This wash we saw when I had my puts was the biggest we had seen on this uptrend. And really so far, if you look back since this day here on the 15th, that was the biggest wash we had got. So that was an opportunity, and there'll be more opportunities like that if we continue this parabolic action on BYND. However, longs are the ones that have been making the big money, getting long this on pretty much any dip. And then we're seeing it being supported because remember, it's such a small float. It's easy for the bid to be propped up and for shorts to get trapped. And now every short's underwater. So a gap up seems likely. If we gap down, will I buy calls? Absolutely. If we can get anywhere near that 95, I'm not too interested in 100 much, maybe 98. I might look into a range between 95 and 98 if we see something serious. But overall, I'm looking for about a 10-point move to the downside. So if we're at 105 right now, I want to see this thing, gap down to 95. That would be ideal for me to want to get long. Maybe between 98 and 95, I'd get calls. Why? Because we do have earnings at the end of this week, and I think that this thing can run up for a couple days heading towards earnings. I definitely think that's possible. And if it doesn't, then I'll take the opposite side. But if we get a severe gap down or a washout, I will be getting calls, likely only a couple strikes out of the money, looking for that return to the all-time highs this week. As far as the puts goes, if we see a gap up, we're at 104 right now. Previously, you'll notice here, and I'll draw this out for you to make it as obvious as possible. Previously, you'll notice here we saw consolidation here below the high of the day and a rip up into the close, held sideways, and then a gap up 7 points. This same day, we saw a similar rip in the morning, a pullback, to reclaim, to consolidate here below the highs, rip up to the close, and then horizontal consolidation. So if we can get a gap up, let's say 7 points, 5 points, and we're looking at a 110 gap up, I definitely am looking for this sort of price action heading into Monday, where we're seeing choppiness, we're seeing sellers come in and sell that gap up. Now, there's a lot of shorts that are going to need to cover, absolutely. But if we see this sort of similar price action, I am looking to get some puts into that open. If we get a push up to 110, especially 115, if we get that high, we might not get that high. We might open up at 102 and I don't do anything, right? But if we do see a gap up, I am looking to get puts because we could get a replication of this downside move. And even if I'm only scalping the puts, for 30 minutes an hour, right? You can make a lot of money off that with given how much this thing moves, especially if everyone decides we're overextended and we're selling off, or we start selling off heading into earnings. But the most optimal scenario would be a complete gap down, wash out to get long, expecting a bounce to return to that 100 or 105. So those are the two scenarios that I'm looking for heading into Monday. This is going to be the first earnings that they're reporting, as a publicly traded company. So anything can happen, guys. Just if you want to go perma bear on this thing, just be careful. Make sure you size that you're okay with taking a complete loss on, because with a float this small and really good earnings, or some PR release comes out, we could definitely rip up to 120, right? 125. I can see that. Given how strong we've been since the IPO and how shorts keep getting trapped, and like I said, Citron Research is underwater on this. It has a very high short interest, guys. We could definitely see a pretty gnarly short squeeze. Is this the short squeeze? We don't know. This could be the beginning or this could be the end. But keep an eye on that $100 level. As long as we're over that, we can certainly keep ripping. If we get a little bit too overextended, I will take puts. And definitely if we get some kind of crazy washout or gap down, I am looking to get calls, betting on that 95 area to hold. Anything below 95, then I'm looking to 90, right? But if we get a 10-point move to the downside, I can see some bounce definitely paying off intraday for sure. So that is my thought process. And one last point here, heading into earnings, again, we don't know what's going to happen here. Anything they release could disappoint because no one really knows what to base the numbers off of, right? So they could announce good earnings and we could still go down because we're quote unquote might be overextended from the IPO around $45, right? So we could still go down for then. I am looking definitely over the next 2 weeks, I'm looking more bearish. And it's likely I'm going to play the earnings, and we'll see. I'll likely either do a straddle there, depending on where we're at in the price, especially if we're ripping into earnings. I'll definitely do that. And if we're up high, I'll be looking to get puts as well, because I'm thinking that we do see a return towards that $90, $95 level post earnings, maybe even lower. But we'll get to that a little bit later. We got to see how this week plans out. Are we going to keep squeezing, or are we going to head back down? But that's all I got for you guys. Continue to stay focused and to learn to control your emotions, develop that bot mentality, which is the trading mentality, guys. I'm getting out of here. Deuces.